All right, let's dive into Roussanne today.
Hmm.
It's a grape that I feel like is having a moment.
Yeah,
It's been in blends for a long time, kind of hiding in the shadows a little bit,
right.
but we're starting to see it more and more as a single varietal. And
Definitely.
we've got some interesting notes here from a Portuguese wine expert
Oh, cool.
about Roussanne and some of the things that they had to say.
Interesting. I'm always curious to see different perspectives, especially across, different wine regions. Like, how does a Portuguese expert view this French grape?
Yeah, exactly. And what I found really fascinating was they were talking about how sommeliers are recommending it as kind of like a gateway
Oh,
for people who want to move beyond Chardonnay
interesting.
into something a little bit different.
Yeah, I could see that because it does have that kind of richness and complexity that Chardonnay is known for,
Yes.
but with its own unique twist.
Yeah, yeah. And it's almost like, how do you even describe Roussanne? It's almost like a chameleon. Depending on where it's grown, how it's vinified,
Absolutely.
it can be so different, right? You can find it in dry whites, dessert wines, even sparkling wines.
Yeah, it's a pretty versatile grape.
So maybe we should start with a little Roussanne 101. Like, what's the origin story of this grape?
Okay, so first of all, it's ancient. We're talking about a grape with roots deep in France's Rhone Valley.
Wow, centuries.
Centuries, yeah. It's been cultivated for, hundreds and hundreds of years.
That's impressive. And I always love that the name itself gives us a little clue.
Oh, yeah,
Roussanne comes from the French word roux, meaning red or golden,
right.
which, if you think about it, describes the color of those ripe berries.
Yeah, it's a little hint right there in the name.
Yeah. Now, I was reading that there are both traditional and modern approaches to making Roussanne wine.
Yeah.
Can you walk me through some of the key differences there?
Okay, so traditionally, winemakers took a very hands-off approach. They would ferment the wine in stainless steel or oak, let those natural yeasts do their thing.
Okay.
But these days, winemakers are kind of embracing modern technology and experimenting with things like cryo extraction.
Cryo extraction. I've heard that term before, but I'm not entirely sure what it means.
So basically, it involves chilling the grapes before pressing,
Okay.
and it's really done to help preserve those delicate aromas and flavors.
Ah, so it's like giving the grapes a little spa treatment before they get to work?
Yeah, exactly. It helps to create a fresher, more vibrant wine.
That makes sense. And then there's metallactic fermentation, which I feel like is one of those winemaking processes that everyone talks about, but I always forget what it actually does.
Sure. Yeah, so malolactic fermentation is basically a process that softens the wine's acidity,
Right.
making it feel smoother and rounder on the palate. It's like I always think of it like the difference between biting into a crisp green apple versus like a juicy ripe pear.
Oh, okay. That's a good analogy.
Yeah, so it kind of takes the edge off that acidity and makes the wine feel more lush and rounded.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've got traditional methods, modern methods, this whole spectrum of potential flavors.
Right.
So what does this mean for someone who is actually picking out a bottle of Roussanne at the store?
I think the biggest takeaway is that you can't just assume all Roussannes will taste the same.
Right.
You have to consider the region, the winemaker's style, the specific vineyard even.
Yeah,
It's like choosing an adventure. You never know exactly what you're going to get.
I like that. So how about we break down some of those regional differences? Let's start with Roussanne's home turf, France's Rhone Valley.
Okay. Yeah, the Rhone's a great place to start
Yeah.
because, the source material highlights both the northern and southern Rhone as kind of key growing areas.
Okay.
But the wines can produce has distinct personalities.
Oh, in what way?
Well, in the northern Rhone, you have appellations like Hermitage and Crozes-Hermitage.
Okay.
And these wines are known for their complexity, their elegance, and their aging potential.
So this is like the ground crew of Roussanne.
Yeah, you could say that. These are the wines you'd want to stash away in your cellar.
All right, so like save them for a special occasion.
Exactly. Now, down in the southern Rhone, in appellations like Châteauneuf-du-Pape, Roussanne is often a team player.
Okay.
It's blended with other grapes, and it contributes, that touch of elegance, those lovely floral aromas,
Right.
a creamy texture that make these wines so irresistible.
So it's like the secret ingredient
Yeah,
that elevates the whole blend.
you could say that. It just adds a certain je ne sais quoi.
Okay, yeah. This is making me want to plan a trip to the Rhone Valley and taste them all side by side.
It's definitely a region worth exploring.
And speaking of blends, our Portuguese expert mentions two other grapes that Roussanne loves to hang out with, Marsanne and Viognier.
Oh, yeah, those are classic blending partners.
So tell me about these dynamic duos.
Well, Marsanne is kind of like the grounding force in the blend. It adds structure
Okay,
and a bright acidity that balances out Roussanne's richness.
got it.
So it's kind of like the yin to Roussanne's yang.
Okay, I like that. It's like a power couple, each bringing their strengths to the table.
Right.
What about Viognier? How does that grape change the game?
So Viognier is like the aromatic powerhouse.
Okay,
It just bursts with floral notes, adds this captivating perfume to the blend.
so it's like the free spirit of the group.
Exactly. Brings a touch of whimsy to the party.
I love these analogies. Now, all this talk about blending is making me curious about like the pure, unadulterated expression of Roussanne.
Right.
So let's dive into its aroma and flavor profile. Like, what should we expect when we're tasting a Roussanne?
Well, with those younger wines, you often get those bright, zesty citrus notes. Things like lemon and grapefruit, sometimes a touch of white floral aromas.
Okay, so refreshing and vibrant.
Yeah, very much so. And then as Roussanne matures, it develops this fascinating complexity.
Okay.
Those citrus notes kind of evolve into richer aromas of honey, beeswax, even spices.
Wow, so it's like watching a flower bloom in slow motion.
Yeah, it's a real sensory journey.
Now, what about the texture? How does Roussanne feel on the palate?
Well, it's often described as full-bodied,
Okay.
with good acidity, so it's balanced, and it has this lovely, almost oily texture that coats the tongue.
I'm really intrigued by this idea of an oily texture.
Yeah,
It's not something you typically associate with white wines.
right, and that's what makes Roussanne so unique. And then, of course, there's that slight bitterness,
Right.
which adds a touch of elegance and complexity.
Okay, so we've got these beautiful aromas, this luxurious texture, this hint of bitterness. What about the color? How can we spot a Roussanne in a glass?
So young Roussannes typically have a straw yellow color with maybe some greenish reflections.
Okay, and what about as they get older?
As they age, they develop those beautiful golden to amber hues.
So you can almost see the history of the wine reflected in its color.
Yeah, exactly, like a liquid time capsule.
I love that. Okay, I'm officially thirsty. Besides France, what are some other countries that are producing noteworthy Roussannes?
Well, the source material mentions the United States, Australia, and South Africa.
Okay, so we've got the new world challenging the old world.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see how Roussanne is expressing itself in different terroirs.
So what can we expect from those different countries?
Well, in California, they have that warm climate.
Right.
So the wines tend to be bold, fruity, with, ripe tropical fruit flavors, often a touch of spice.
So California Roussanne is like the life of the party.
Yeah, exactly. Full of sunshine and flavor.
I like it. And then down under in Australia.
Australia, the style's a bit more restrained.
Okay.
Australian Roussanne tends to be fresher, more vibrant, with good acidity, and those lovely citrus and floral aromas we talked about earlier.
Okay, so more elegant.
Yeah, you could say that.
And then to round out the trio, South Africa.
Right. So South African Roussanne kind of strikes a balance between the boldness of California and the restraint of Australia.
Oh, interesting.
So the wines are typically complex and elegant with notes of tropical fruit, honey, and spice.
So it's like the sophisticated world traveler
Yeah, I like that.
of the bunch. Okay, now, even a rising star like Roussanne faces obstacles, right? There's a section here about challenges and future prospects.
Of course. Even the noblest of grapes can't escape the realities of the world.
So what are some of the biggest hurdles facing Roussanne right now?
Well, climate change is definitely top of mind for a lot of winemakers.
Right, makes sense.
Rising temperatures can affect the grape's ripening cycle,
Yeah,
potentially lead to imbalanced wines.
it's such a delicate balance, and I imagine even a slight shift can throw things off.
Absolutely. And then, there's the simple fact that Roussanne isn't exactly a household name yet.
Right?
It faces stiff competition from more well-known grapes. So, raising consumer awareness is crucial.
Yeah, it's all about getting the word out, letting people discover the magic of Roussanne.
Exactly. And of course, sustainability is a major concern for the entire wine industry, not just Roussanne.
Right.
Finding ways to farm responsibly, minimize environmental impact, that's essential for the long-term health of the planet and the wine industry as a whole.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot at stake. But despite these challenges, is there reason to be optimistic about the future of Roussanne?
I think there's plenty of reason for optimism. For one thing, Roussanne is a remarkably adaptable grape.
Okay.
It's already proven that it can thrive in a variety of climates and soil types.
So it's got that resilience factor working in its favor.
Exactly. And as consumers become more adventurous
Yeah.
and open to trying new things, I think Roussanne is well positioned to capture their attention.
Right.
It's a grape with a story to tell,
Yeah.
a story of history, terroir, and passionate winemaking. And I think more and more people are ready to hear that story.
I couldn't agree more. Now, before we move on, I want to circle back to something we discussed earlier, the concept of terroir
Okay?
and how it influences the character of Roussanne wines. It seems like there's a lot more to unpack there.
Absolutely. It's a topic that deserves further exploration. And remember, terroir encompasses Not just the soil and climate,
Right.
but also the human element.
Right.
You know, the winemaker's choices, the winemaker's techniques, all of that plays a role.
Right. So it's this intricate interplay of nature and human craftsmanship
Exactly.
that shapes each bottle of Roussanne. We've covered a lot of ground here, but there's still so much to discover.
Indeed.
So stay tuned for part 2 of our Roussanne adventure.
Can't wait.
Welcome back. We're getting deeper into Roussanne.
Yeah, I'm excited to keep exploring this grape.
Me too. I mean, we were talking about all these regional differences,
Right.
how Roussanne can be so different depending on where it's grown.
Exactly. It really is a testament to the power of terroir.
Terroir. And I think that's a perfect segue into what our Portuguese wine expert talks about next.
Oh, what's that?
Well, they kind of go into this deep dive into the ampelography of Roussanne.
Ampelography. There's that wine nerd word again.
I know, right? I always feel a little fancy when I say it.
But it's fascinating stuff. It's like getting a fingerprint for each grape variety.
Okay, I'm ready to put on my detective hat.
Okay, so what do we know about the Roussanne vine? Well, it has medium to large leaves, usually with 5 distinct lobes.
5 lobe.
Yeah. And the bunches are compact, and the berries themselves are on the smaller side with thick skins.
Thick skin, small berries. That reminds me of something we talked about earlier.
You're thinking about concentrated flations, right?
Yes. Doesn't that thick skin usually mean that the flavors are more intense?
You got it. It's like the grape is protecting its precious juice inside that tough exterior.
I love that. And those thick skins also contribute to the tannins in the wine, right?
They do. And that helps explain why Roussanne wines have that wonderful structure and aging potential we were talking about.
Okay, yeah. This is all starting to click now. What else did our Portuguese expert have to say about the Roussanne vine?
They pointed out that Roussanne is a late ripening grape.
Which means it needs a warm climate to fully ripen.
Exactly, like a sunbather who needs those long, lazy days.
I love that analogy. But all that sunshine also comes with some challenges, right?
You're thinking about diseases.
Yeah, exactly.
You're right. Roussanne is acceptable to things like powdery mildew,
Right.
gray rot, especially in more humid conditions.
So it's a bit of a high-maintenance grape.
In a way, yes. But, that's where the skill and dedication of the winemaker really come in.
Yeah.
They use all those viticultural practices we discussed earlier, pruning, trellising, disease control, to protect the vines and ensure a healthy crop.
So it's a delicate dance between nature and human intervention.
It really is. Oh, and speaking of human intervention, there's another interesting aspect of Roussanne I wanted to bring up.
Oh, what's that?
This idea of noble grapes.
Noble grapes.
Yeah. Our Portuguese expert uses that term to describe Roussanne.
What does that mean in the context of wine?
Well, it's like a title of honor bestowed upon grapes that have consistently produced high-quality wines throughout history.
Oh, okay.
Like, think of it as the wine world's equivalent of royalty.
So is Roussanne like the king or queen of grapes?
In a way, yes. I mean, there's a good reason for that, right? Roussanne possesses this unique combination of qualities.
Right.
Its richness, its complexity, its aging potential, and it's earned its place among the wine world's elite.
That's pretty cool. And it ties back to something we were talking about earlier, Roussanne's versatility.
Absolutely. This noble grape can wear many hats.
Hmm.
It shines as a single varietal wine. It adds depth and intrigue to blends.
Right.
And it even has the potential to create some really stunning sparkling wines.
It's like the multi-talented performer of the wine world.
I like that. Now, speaking of talent, our Portuguese expert mentions a few specific producers who are doing really exceptional things with Roussanne.
Oh, I love name dropping. Who are we talking about?
Well, from the Rhone Valley, there are some familiar names. M. Chapoutier, Domaine Jean-Louis Chave, Domaine Marc Searle.
Okay, yeah.
These producers have a deep understanding of the Roussanne grape and a real commitment to crafting world-class wines.
It's like they're speaking the language of Roussanne fluently.
Exactly. And, we can't forget about Tablas Creek Vineyard in California.
Oh, yeah.
They're really pioneers in the New World, showcasing the potential of Rhone varieties in American soil.
Okay, cool. I'm adding all of these names to my wines to try list.
Good, good. This deep dive is really expanding my wine horizons, too.
Mine too. But before we wrap up this part, there's one more point I want to touch on that our expert brings up.
Oh, what's that?
It's about the challenges facing the wine world today, especially with climate change.
Right. Rising temperatures, shifting weather patterns. It's a big concern for everyone.
And especially for winemakers who work so closely with nature.
Exactly. And Roussanne, with its specific climate requirements
Yeah.
and its susceptibility to certain diseases, is definitely feeling the impact.
So what can be done? Is there hope for Roussanne in a changing world?
Well, I think there's always hope. Winemakers are incredibly resilient
Yeah.
and innovative. They're constantly adapting their practices to meet the challenges of the day.
So they're finding ways to work with nature rather than against it.
Exactly. They're experimenting with new viticultural techniques,
Okay.
exploring different vineyard sites, even researching new grape varieties that might be more resistant to climate change.
So they're playing a game of chess with Mother Nature, trying to stay one step ahead.
That's a great way to put it. And it's not just about adaptation.
Okay.
There's also a growing awareness of the importance of sustainability in the wine industry.
Yes, we talked about that. It's about respecting the land,
Yeah,
minimizing our impact, and ensuring that future generations can also enjoy this amazing beverage.
absolutely. It's a holistic approach that considers the health of the planet and the well-being of future generations.
Cheers to that.
Cheers. So we've explored Roussanne's noble heritage,
Yeah.
delved into its ampelography, discussed the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. But the journey's not over yet. In the final part of our deep dive, we're going to bring all of this together
Okay.
and talk about the most important part, the experience of drinking Roussanne.
Sounds good to me. Okay, so we've talked the talk, but now I'm ready to walk the walk.
Ah, you want to open a bottle?
Yes. But before we actually do that, I'm curious.
Yeah?
Our Portuguese wine expert actually goes into quite a bit of detail
Oh.
about how to really taste and appreciate Roussanne.
Yeah, all ears.
And one of the things they really emphasized was the importance of paying attention
Okay.
to the nuances, right? Like all those layers of aroma
Yeah,
and flavor
that's
that you
it.
can get from this grape.
It's not just about gulping it down.
Right.
It's about really engaging all of your senses.
So it's like a mindful tasting experience.
Exactly. And, our expert suggests starting with a visual inspection.
Okay.
Notice the color, the clarity of the wine.
Okay, so we're looking for those straw yellows, those golden hues that we talked about earlier.
Absolutely. And then give the wine a swirl.
Right.
This releases the aromas,
Yeah.
allows them to really express themselves.
This is where things get fun. So you swirl the glass, and then what? What kind of aromas should we be on the lookout for?
Yeah, it depends on the style of Roussanne, right?
Okay.
Remember those bright citrus notes we talk about?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
typical of younger wines.
Lemon, grapefruit, all that good stuff.
Exactly. And then as the wine ages, those aromas can evolve, right? Into richer notes like honey,
Right.
beeswax,
Okay.
spice.
Ooh, I like the sound of that.
Yeah, it's really fascinating.
So we've inspected the color, we've swirled the glass, we've taken a deep inhale.
Okay, you're ready.
What happens next?
Now it's time for the first sip.
Ah.
If we really pay attention to the texture,
Okay.
that lovely, almost oily sensation that coats your palate.
It's like a velvet curtain for your taste buds.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And notice how those flavors linger on the finish.
Right.
That's a sign of a well-crafted wine.
Okay, now I have to ask because I'm already thinking about dinner.
Yeah.
What about food pairings? What kind of dishes would you recommend with Roussanne?
Roussanne is really versatile when it comes to food.
Okay, good to know.
It can handle everything from light salads and seafood
Okay.
to richer dishes like roasted chicken
Okay.
or creamy pasta.
Okay, cool. So let's say I'm pouring a young, vibrant Roussanne.
Okay?
What would you pair with that?
Think fresh, bright flavors
Okay.
like a salad with citrus vinaigrette, grilled shrimp with herbs,
Okay.
maybe a simple pasta with lemon and Parmesan cheese.
So you're matching the vibrancy of the wine with equally vibrant dishes.
Exactly. And if you're opening a more mature Roussanne,
Okay.
one that's developed those richer honeyed notes,
Okay.
those wines can handle dishes with a bit more intensity.
Okay.
Roasted chicken with herbs, creamy mushroom risotto,
Okay.
maybe even a mild curry.
And what about those classic pairings from the Rhone Valley?
Oh, yeah. The Rhone is known for its Mediterranean cuisine.
Right.
Lots of fresh seafood, olives,
Right.
herbs, garlic.
I love it.
All of those flavors work beautifully with Roussanne.
So we could imagine a plate of grilled fish with Provençal herbs,
Yeah.
or maybe a creamy goat cheese tart with olives and tomatoes.
That sounds delicious. You're making me hungry.
Me too. And don't be afraid to experiment, right?
Absolutely not. That's part of the fun of food and wine pairing.
It's all about finding those unexpected combinations that really make your taste buds sing.
Exactly. And remember, the most important pairing is the one that you enjoy the most.
Right, of course. Okay, well, I think we've pretty thoroughly explored the world of Roussanne.
Yeah, I think so.
Its history, its origins,
Yeah.
all of its unique characteristics.
Its versatility,
Exactly.
the challenges and opportunities.
And how to really appreciate it.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground.
But most importantly, we've hopefully sparked a little curiosity in our listeners.
I hope so.
So go out, find a bottle, savor its aroma,
Yeah.
and let its flavors transport you
To the Rhone Valley.
to the Rhone Valley. Exactly.
Cheers to Roussanne.
Years to Roussanne, 21690.